I distributed the assets during my lifetime, and my oldest daughter said to me, "The garage is the only place left for you, Mom." When I revealed my late husband's letter, she begged to have everything back. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached." The morning light streamed through my kitchen window as I carefully arranged the manila folders on the dining table. Each one contained documents that would forever change my family dynamic. At 65, I had finally decided to follow my late husband Daniel's advice. "Sharon, don't wait until you're gone for the kids to enjoy what you've built. Let them have it while you can still see them happy." Daniel had been gone for 3 years now. Cancer took him quickly, leaving me alone in our spacious 5-bedroom colonial that echoed with memories but felt increasingly empty. After months of consideration, I had made my decision. I would distribute my assets among my 3 children while I was still alive. The doorbell rang precisely at noon. Jessica, my eldest, always punctual. I smoothed my cotton dress and tucked a strand of gray hair behind my ear before opening the door. "Mom," Jessica said, air-kissing my cheek. At 43, she was the spitting image of me at her age, except for the hardness around her eyes that I never had. "Are Matthew and Amber here yet?" "Not yet, dear. You know your brother is always running late, and Amber's flight from Chicago lands at 1. Jessica rolled her eyes and strode into the house like she already owned it. In many ways, she had been eyeing it for years. The subtle comments about how she could put this place to good use, or how her family was outgrowing their current home, never escaped my notice. By 2 o'clock, we were all seated around the dining table. Matthew, my only son, nervously drummed, his fingers against his coffee mug. At 38, he had never quite found his footing in life, bouncing between careers and relationships. Amber, my youngest at 34, sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She'd flown in from Chicago, where she worked as a pediatric nurse, a career she loved, but that had never made her wealthy. "I've gathered you all here because I've made an important decision," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "Your father always said we should give with warm hands, not cold ones. So I've decided to distribute my assets now, while I'm still here to see you enjoy them." The mood in the room shifted. Matthew sat up straighter. Amber's eyes widened slightly. Jessica's expression remained unreadable. "Jessica," I said, sliding the first folder toward her. "You've always loved this house. It's where you grew up, where you had your wedding reception in the backyard. I'm giving it to you." Jessica's mask slipped, revealing a flash of triumph before she composed herself. "Oh, Mom, I don't know what to say." "Matthew," I continued, pushing the second folder across the table. "You'll receive my investment portfolio and the vacation property in Maine. You've always loved that little cabin." "Mom, thank you," Matthew stammered, his eyes welling up. "And Amber," I said, turning to my youngest. "You'll receive the rental properties downtown and my personal savings. I know you've been wanting to open your own pediatric clinic someday." Amber's hand trembled as she reached for the folder. "This is too much, Mom." "Nonsense," I said, smiling. "I've kept enough for myself to live comfortably. This is what your father and I always wanted." That evening, after the necessary papers had been signed and notarized, we shared a celebratory dinner. Jessica ordered expensive champagne. Matthew proposed a toast. Amber helped me clear the dishes, whispering, "Are you sure about this, Mom?" I squeezed her hand. "I'm sure, sweetie." One by one, they left. Matthew was the first to go, claiming an early meeting the next day. Amber had a flight to catch. Jessica lingered, walking through the house as if seeing it with new eyes. "When do you think you'll move out, Mom?" she asked casually. The question caught me off guard. "Move out?" "Well, yes. I mean, Eric and I would like to start renovations soon. The kids are excited about having their own rooms. I hadn't considered this. Somehow, in my mind, I would continue living here, at least for a while. I haven't made any plans yet. Jessica's smile didn't reach her eyes. Let me show you something. She took my arm, leading me through the kitchen and out the side door to the attached garage. She flipped on the light, revealing my late husband's workshop, largely untouched since his death. We could convert this space for you, she said, gesturing around. Put in some insulation, a small bathroom. It would be cozy. Her voice dropped to a tone that made my blood run cold. After all, the garage is all you need, Mom. You don't require much space anymore, do you? I stood there, feeling the chill of the concrete floor seep through my slippers. The walls seemed to close in around me as I realized what was happening. My own daughter was relegating me to the garage of the home I had lived in for 40 years. I've already spoken to a contractor, Jessica continued, not noticing or not caring about my silence. He can start next week. My throat tightened, but I nodded, unable to form words. As I looked around at Daniel's old workbench and the dusty shelves, a single tear escaped before I could stop it. This was not at all what I had envisioned when I decided to give my children their inheritance early. That night, alone in my bedroom, soon to be Jessica's bedroom, I stared at the ceiling, Daniel's words echoing in my mind. Let them have it. While you can still see them happy. I had never considered that their happiness might come at the expense of my dignity. What had I done? And more importantly, what would I do now? 2 weeks after signing away my life, I stood in what Jessica now called my suite. The garage renovation had been hasty and minimal. A twin bed pushed against one wall, a small dresser, and a nightstand with a lamp. They had installed a toilet and shower in the corner, separated by a flimsy curtain that offered little privacy. The concrete floor remained, covered only by a thin area rug that did nothing to keep out the chill. It's perfect, Jessica had declared when the contractors finished. She didn't ask if I agreed. That morning, I woke to the sound of moving trucks. Looking out my single window, I watched as men carried furniture out of my home, my former home. My antique dining table, the one Daniel and I had saved for during our first year of marriage. The vintage china cabinet that had belonged to my grandmother. The leather armchair where Daniel used to read every evening. We're redecorating, Jessica explained when she saw me watching. Eric thinks the old stuff is too. Dated. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. What could I say? It wasn't my house anymore. That afternoon, I tried to enter through the main door to get a glass of water. The key didn't work. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Jessica said, appearing at the side entrance. We changed the locks for security purposes. You'll need to use the garage door from now on. I'll make sure you have water in your mini fridge. Mini fridge. Like I was a college student in a dorm room, not a 65-year-old woman who had raised 3 children in this house. Days blurred together. Jessica's children, 10-year-old Zach and 8-year-old Emma, were instructed to leave Grandma alone when she's in her room. My room, the garage. One morning, Jessica knocked on my door at 7 a.m. Mom, I need a favor. Can you watch the kids today? Our nanny called in sick, and I have an important lunch meeting. I agreed, of course. They were my grandchildren. Great. They've already had breakfast. Zach has homework to finish and Emma needs to practice piano. I'll be back around 4. By noon, both children were hungry. I opened my mini fridge to find nothing but a half-empty bottle of water and some crackers. Can we go into the house to make lunch? Emma asked. I don't have a key, sweetheart. But you live here, Zach said, confusion clouding his young face. I live in the garage now, I explained gently. The house belongs to your mom and dad. Emma's face scrunched up. That's weird. Why would Grandma live in a garage? I had no answer that wouldn't tarnish their image of their mother. Eventually, I called for pizza delivery, using my credit card, the one connected to the personal savings I had given to Amber. When Jessica returned at 5:30 p.m., not 4 p.m. as promised, she frowned at the pizza boxes. "Mom, you know the kids aren't supposed to have junk food on weekdays." "They were hungry," I said simply. "And I don't have access to the kitchen." Jessica sighed dramatically. "You could have called me." "I didn't want to interrupt your meeting." That night, as I sat on my bed listening to the hum of the old refrigerator, I wondered how things had gone so wrong so quickly. The garage was cold. The insulation Jessica promised hadn't materialized. I pulled Daniel's old cardigan tighter around my shoulders, wishing he were here to tell me what to do. The next morning, I woke with a fever and chills. My throat felt like I'd swallowed glass. Getting up was a struggle, but I managed to reach my phone and text Jessica. "Not feeling well today. Could you bring me some tea and medicine?" 3 hours passed with no response. I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. By evening, my fever had worsened, and I was shivering uncontrollably. I texted Matthew and Amber, not wanting to worry them but desperate for help. Matthew responded first. "Sorry, Mom. I'm in Boston for a conference until Friday." Amber called immediately. "Mom, you sound terrible. Have you taken anything? Has Jessica checked on you?" "No," I admitted. "I think she's busy." "That's ridiculous. I'm calling her right now." An hour later, Jessica appeared at my door with a bottle of Tylenol and a lukewarm cup of tea. "Amber said you're sick," she said, keeping her distance. "I left soup in the microwave. In the mudroom. You can heat it up later." She left without checking my temperature or asking if I needed anything else. I lay in bed that night, tears silently tracking down my cheeks. How had my own daughter become so cold? When had I become a burden rather than a mother? The following day, my fever broke, but my spirit remained crushed. Feeling slightly stronger, I decided to go through some of the boxes I'd hastily packed. When moving to the garage, most contained clothes and personal items, but one box caught my attention. An old cedar chest that Daniel had kept locked during his lifetime. I remembered him mentioning it once. "When I'm gone, the key will be with..." My cufflinks in the dresser drawer. Those cufflinks, along with the dresser, were now probably in a dumpster somewhere, discarded by Jessica and Eric during their redecorating. But the chest itself had made its way to my garage sanctuary. I examined the lock, an old brass mechanism that looked fragile with age. Using a hairpin and techniques learned from Matthew's lockpicking phase as a teenager, I managed to pop it open after several attempts. Inside were photo albums I'd never seen, documents in neat folders, and a sealed envelope with my name written in Daniel's distinctive handwriting. The notation below my name read, "To be opened when all seems lost." My hands trembled as I held the envelope. Had Daniel somehow foreseen this? Did he know that I would one day find myself relegated to the garage, stripped of dignity and property, by our own daughter? I carefully broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside, Daniel's voice seemingly coming alive in the words before me. "My dearest Sharon, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and something has gone terribly wrong." My hands trembled as I unfolded Daniel's letter, the paper thin and delicate between my fingers. His familiar handwriting blurred through my tears. "My dearest Sharon, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and something has gone terribly wrong. I've always hoped this letter would remain sealed forever, but I know our children better than perhaps you do." I saw the way Jessica watched our assets, how Matthew hesitated to stand on his own feet, how Amber struggled to find her voice in the shadow of her siblings. I pray I'm wrong, but if you've opened this letter, I suspect they've disappointed you. Perhaps even hurt you deeply. Most likely it was Jessica. She has always had her mother's beauty, but, regrettably, none of your compassion. First, I want you to know that I've prepared for this possibility. You were always too trusting, seeing only the best in our children. It's what I've always loved. About you. But it's also what made me worry. Here's what you need to know. Everything you believe you've given away can be reclaimed. Every document you signed contains a clause. Page 4, paragraph 3, subsection B, written in legal language but essentially stating that all transfers are contingent upon your continued well-being and respectful treatment by the recipients. Marcus Peterson, our lawyer, insisted on this clause, though I asked him not to draw attention to it during the signing. Second, I've secured your future regardless of what happens with the children. There is a safety deposit box at First National Bank, 0473, accessible with the key hidden in the false bottom of this chest. Inside, you'll find documents for a property at 1752 Willow Creek Road, a modest but comfortable house I purchased 5 years ago when my diagnosis first came. You'll also find access to accounts containing funds I've set aside specifically for you, money that our children know nothing about. Sharon, my love, you've spent your life giving. You gave me your heart, gave our children your soul, gave everyone around you the warmth of your spirit. Now it's time to protect yourself. I'm sorry I couldn't shield you from this pain. I'm sorry our children didn't become the people we raised them to be, but you still have time to live the life you deserve, one of respect and dignity. Remember what we used to say? Love is given freely, but respect must be earned. Our children have lost the right to your generosity. Do not let misplaced guilt or maternal obligation keep you in a situation that diminishes you. You are stronger than you know, Sharon. You always have been. With eternal love, Daniel. I pressed the letter to my chest, a sob escaping my lips. Daniel knew. Somehow he had anticipated this betrayal and prepared for it. The weight that had been crushing me began to lift, replaced by something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. With shaking hands, I felt around the bottom of the chest until I found the loose panel. Prying it open revealed a small brass key with a tag labeled 473. I slipped it into my pocket and continued examining the chest's contents. Among the papers was a manila folder marked Legal. Inside, I found copies of the very documents I had signed 2 weeks ago, giving away my home and assets. I scanned to page 4, paragraph 3, subsection B. The legal jargon was dense, but the meaning was clear. I had the right to revoke everything if I was not treated with appropriate care, respect, and consideration. A hysterical laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. All this time, Jessica thought she had won, but Daniel had outmaneuvered her from beyond the grave. The next morning, I called a taxi to take me to First National Bank. I didn't tell Jessica I was leaving. She rarely checked on me anyway. The safety deposit box contained exactly what Daniel had promised. Deeds to a property I'd never seen, bank statements showing accounts with substantial balances, and a set of keys. From the bank, I directed the taxi to 1752 Willow Creek Road. As we turned onto a quiet, tree-lined street, my heart began to race. The house that came into view wasn't large or particularly remarkable, a single-story ranch with blue shutters and a well-maintained garden. But tears sprang to my eyes at the sight of it. It was mine. A sanctuary Daniel had created just for me. The key slid perfectly into the lock. Inside, the house was clean but unfurnished, waiting for me to make it a home. I walked from room to room, running my hands along the walls, opening and closing doors, imagining the possibilities. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with new appliances, a small sunroom overlooking a backyard with mature oak trees. It wasn't the grand colonial I had shared with Daniel, but it was perfect. I spent hours there, sitting on the floor of what would become my bedroom, thinking. Daniel had given me an escape route, but should I take it? Part of me wanted to confront Jessica, to wave the documents in her face and reclaim what was rightfully mine. Another part simply wanted peace, a fresh start away from the pain and humiliation. In the late afternoon, I reluctantly locked up the house and called another taxi to take me back to the garage I now called home. I needed time to plan my next move carefully. When I returned, Jessica's car was in the driveway. I slipped into the garage through the side door, hoping to avoid her, but she was waiting for me. "Where have you been?" she demanded, arms crossed. "I came to check on you and you were gone." I was tempted to ask why she suddenly cared about my whereabouts, but instead I simply said, "I had some errands to run." She narrowed her eyes. "What kind of errands?" "Personal matters," I replied, feeling a new confidence in my voice. "You should tell me when you're leaving," she said. "What if there had been an emergency with the kids? I might have needed you." Of course, she wasn't concerned about me. She was concerned about losing her convenient babysitter. "I'll keep that in mind," I said neutrally. Jessica lingered, looking around the garage with a small frown. "Mom, I've been thinking we should probably formalize our arrangement." "What arrangement?" "Your living situation. I think we should have a written agreement about your responsibilities around the house in exchange for allowing you to stay here." My blood ran cold. "Responsibilities?" "Nothing major," she said with a dismissive wave. "Helping with the kids after school, some light housekeeping. Maybe handling the gardening since you enjoy it so much." In that moment, looking at my daughters, calculating expression, I realized she didn't see me as her mother anymore. I was just a resource to be utilized. Free childcare, free housekeeping, free gardening. "I see," I said quietly. "Eric's lawyer can draw something up," she continued, oblivious to my distress, or perhaps simply indifferent to it. "We'll have you sign it this weekend." As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. "Oh, and Mom? We're having some friends over for dinner tomorrow night. Could you make your lasagna? Everyone always loves it." The door closed behind her before I could respond. I sank onto my bed, Daniel's letter still in my pocket. It was time to make a decision. Would I continue to be Jessica's servant, living in a garage that grew colder by the day? Or would I reclaim my dignity and start fresh, as Daniel had intended? For the first time in weeks, the answer was crystal clear. I woke the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt since Daniel died. The helplessness that had plagued me for weeks was gone, replaced by quiet determination. I would not sign Jessica's agreement. I would not spend my remaining years as an unpaid servant in my own home. Correction, in her home. But I needed to be smart about this. Jessica had always been calculating, and if she sensed my plans, she might try to stop me. I needed time to consult with Marcus Peterson, the family lawyer, and to prepare my new home. Most importantly, I needed to make sure the legal clause Daniel had mentioned would hold up, so I made lasagna. I smiled pleasantly when Jessica unlocked the house for me to use the kitchen. I chopped onions and browned meat and layered noodles, while she watched, satisfied that her mother was fulfilling her proper role. I even agreed to serve the meal to her friends that evening, playing the part of the doting grandmother who just loves helping out. "Mom's so happy in her little garage apartment," Jessica told her friends over dinner, patting my hand condescendingly. "It's perfect for someone her age. No stairs to worry about. Everything within reach." I smiled tightly and refilled wine glasses, biding my time. The next morning, I called Marcus Peterson's office from a payphone at the grocery store. His secretary sounded surprised to hear from me but scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. "Mrs. Miller, it's good to see you," Marcus said, rising from his desk when I entered his office. He was younger than me, but had handled our family's legal matters for 20 years. "I've been wondering how you've been doing. Please have a seat." I sat across from him, clutching my purse. "Marcus, I need to discuss the property transfers I made to my children. He nodded. I assumed as much. How is it working out? Not well, I admitted, then briefly described my current living conditions. As I spoke, Marcus's professional demeanor gave way to visible discomfort. Mrs. Miller, I'm so sorry. This is exactly what Daniel feared might happen. He mentioned a clause in the contracts, something that would allow me to revoke the transfers if I wasn't treated properly. Marcus pulled out a thick file folder. Yes, Section 4, Char 3B. Daniel was quite insistent about including it, though he asked me not to highlight it during the signing process. He flipped to the relevant page and pushed it across the desk. Essentially, it states that the transfers are contingent upon the recipients providing you with appropriate care, accommodation, and respect. If those conditions aren't met, you have the right to revoke the transfers entirely. And would living in a poorly insulated garage, with limited access to the house, qualify as inappropriate accommodation? Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Without question. But Mrs. Miller, if you choose to pursue this, it could get confrontational. Your children, particularly Jessica, it sounds like, may not take this well. I'm aware, I said quietly, but I need to know my options. For the next hour, Marcus outlined the legal process. I would need to document the conditions I was living in, formally notify my children of my intention to revoke the transfers, and file paperwork with the county. It wouldn't be immediate. There would be a waiting period during which my children could contest my claims, but Marcus seemed confident that the clause would hold up. Daniel was very thorough, he explained. He wanted to make sure you were protected. As I left Marcus's office, I felt a wave of gratitude for my late husband. Even after death, he was still looking out for me. Over the next 2 weeks, I built my case quietly. I took photos of my living conditions in the garage. I kept a detailed journal of Jessica's behavior toward me. I recorded conversations on my old cassette recorder, capturing her dismissive tone and unreasonable demands. Meanwhile, I began preparing my escape. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, transferring funds from the accounts Daniel had left me. I visited the Willow Creek house several times, measuring for furniture and making lists of what I would need. I even hired a handyman to install additional security features, new deadbolts, window locks, a security system. If Jessica discovered what I was doing, I didn't put it past her to try to claim that property too. I reached out to Matthew and Amber, cautiously feeling out where they stood. Matthew seemed distracted during our phone call, vaguely apologetic about not visiting but making no concrete plans to do so. Amber, however, was different. "Mom, I've been so worried about you," she said when I called. "I didn't want to interfere, but the way Jessica's treating you, it's not right." "You knew?" I asked, surprised. "I suspected something was wrong when I called during your illness, and Jessica barely seemed concerned. Then when I tried to visit last week, she made excuses about why it wasn't a good time." Amber paused. "Mom, are you really living in the garage?" I confirmed that I was, and Amber's outrage was immediate and fierce. "That's unacceptable. You gave her that house out of generosity, not so she could banish you to the garage like some unwanted pet." Hearing my youngest daughter's indignation was validating. At least one of my children still saw me as a person deserving of respect. "I'm handling it, Amber," I assured her. "But I may need your support when things come to a head." "You have it," she promised without hesitation. "Just tell me what you need." The day before my planned confrontation with Jessica, I visited Daniel's grave. The cemetery was peaceful, autumn leaves creating a golden carpet around his headstone. I sat on the small bench nearby, feeling closer to him than I had in months. "You knew, didn't you?" I said softly. "You knew she might do this." The wind rustled the leaves in response. "I'm going to stand up for myself tomorrow. I'm going to take back what's mine." I traced his name on the cold stone. Not out of vengeance, but because it's right, because I deserve better than a garage. As I stood to leave, I noticed an elderly couple a few plots away, holding hands as they stood before a grave. Love that had withstood the test of time, just like mine and Daniel's. I wondered if they had children who valued them, who saw them as more than just a source of inheritance. That evening, back in my garage apartment, I meticulously arranged all my documentation. The photos, the journal, the recordings, the legal papers Marcus had prepared. Tomorrow, Jessica would learn that her mother wasn't as easily discarded as she'd thought. I sent a text message to both Matthew and Amber. Family meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. Jessica's house. Important matters to discuss. Please be there. Amber responded immediately. I'll be there. Matthew replied an hour later. We'll try. As I prepared for bed, I heard Jessica and Eric in the kitchen, their voices carrying through the thin walls. They were discussing renovation plans for the master bathroom. My bathroom, where Daniel and I had gotten ready together every morning for decades. It's going to be perfect, Jessica was saying. Mom's old fixtures are so dated. Speaking of your mom, Eric replied, are you sure she's okay out there? Winter's coming and that garage gets pretty cold. She's fine, Jessica dismissed. Mom's tougher than she looks. Besides, we're giving her a free place to live. She should be grateful. Grateful for being exiled to a garage after giving away my home out of love. I closed my eyes, Daniel's voice echoing in my mind. You are stronger than you know, Sharon. You always have been. Tomorrow would prove him right. The morning of the family meeting, I woke before dawn. Sleep had been elusive, my mind rehearsing what I would say, anticipating Jessica's reactions. I dressed carefully in one of the few nice outfits I had managed to keep in my limited storage space. A navy blue dress that Daniel had always loved, paired with the pearl necklace he gave me on our 30th anniversary. Appearing dignified was important today. I wasn't going to confront Jessica looking like the downtrodden garage dweller she had reduced me to. By noon, Amber had arrived. I watched from my window as Jessica greeted her at the front door, their body language tense even from a distance. Jessica hadn't bothered to tell me that Amber was here, but within minutes, there was a knock at my garage door. Mom, Amber said, wrapping me in a fierce hug. Oh my God, this is worse than I imagined. She looked around the garage, taking in the twin bed, the makeshift bathroom area, the mini fridge, her expression transforming from shock to fury. How could she do this to you? This is elder abuse. It's going to be addressed today, I assured her, patting her hand. Is Matthew here yet? No, but he texted that he's on his way. Late as usual. Amber's eyes filled with tears. Mom, why didn't you call me sooner? You could have stayed with me in Chicago. I needed to handle this my way, I said, and I didn't want to worry you. Amber helped me gather my documentation. At 1:55 p.m., we walked together from the garage to the main house. Jessica opened the door, her smile faltering when she saw the folder in my hands. What's that? She asked. We'll discuss it when everyone's here, I replied calmly. The living room, my living room, with new furniture I didn't recognize, felt foreign. Jessica directed us to sit, playing the role of hostess. In my home, I chose Daniel's old spot by the fireplace, drawing strength from the memories of him in this room. Matthew arrived 15 minutes late, looking harried. Sorry, traffic was a nightmare, he muttered, kissing my cheek before dropping into a chair. What's this about, Mom? I had to reschedule 2 meetings. I'll explain everything now that you're all here, I said. Jessica sat beside Eric, her posture rigid, eyes wary. Amber positioned herself next to me, a silent show of support. Matthew looked between us, sensing the tension but clearly confused by it. I took a deep breath. 3 weeks ago, I gave each of you substantial gifts. This house to Jessica, investment portfolios, and the main property to Matthew, rental properties and savings to Amber. I did this because I believed you would honor your father's and my legacy, and because I trusted you to treat me with the respect I deserve. I opened my folder, removing the photographs I had taken of my garage living quarters. Instead, this is how I've been living. In a poorly insulated garage, with limited access to the house I've lived in for 40 years. Treated not as a mother, but as an inconvenience, I passed the photos around. Matthew's eyes widened as he flipped through them. Jessica shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. When your father died, he left me a letter to be opened. When all seems lost. I opened it 2 weeks ago. I withdrew Daniel's letter, my voice steady as I read portions aloud. His concerns about our children, his preparations for my protection, his final affirmation of my strength. When I finished, the room was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, the clock that had kept time through birthdays, holidays, arguments, reconciliations, all the moments that had defined our family. Matthew spoke first, his voice hoarse. Jessica, you put Mom in the garage? What the hell? Jessica straightened defensively. She needed less space at her age. It made sense. It made sense to relegate our mother to the garage? Amber's voice trembled with rage. After she gave you this house? She didn't need the whole house anymore, Jessica protested. It was wasteful, and it's not like the garage is some kind of slum. I had it fixed up. Fixed up? I interjected, my voice quiet but firm. Jessica, you installed a shower curtain and a toilet in the corner of a concrete room. You put in a mini fridge and expected me to be grateful. I was doing you a favor. Jessica's voice rose. You didn't have to worry about maintenance or yard work or… Enough! Matthew had always been the quietest of my children, often overshadowed by his sisters. But now he stood, face flushed with anger. This is disgusting, Jessica. Mom gave us everything, and you treated her like this? Jessica turned to Eric for support, but he was staring at his hands, clearly uncomfortable. She tried a different approach, her voice softening artificially. Mom, I know it's not perfect, but we're family. We're looking out for you. You're getting older, and this arrangement makes sense financially and practically. I met her gaze steadily, no longer intimidated by her manipulations. That's why I called this meeting today, to discuss our arrangements going forward. I withdrew the legal papers Marcus had prepared. According to the terms of our original agreement, page 4, paragraph 3, subsection B, the transfer of property was contingent upon my receiving appropriate care and accommodations. This condition has clearly been violated. Jessica's face paled. What are you talking about? I'm revoking the transfers, I said calmly. All of them. The room erupted. Jessica leapt to her feet, shouting about ingratitude and overreaction. Matthew asked rapid-fire questions about the legal implications. Amber sat silently, a small, satisfied smile on her lips. You can't do this, Jessica finally sputtered. The house is mine now. You signed it over. Read the documents yourself, I said, sliding copies across the coffee table. Your father anticipated this possibility. He made sure I was protected. Jessica snatched the papers, her eyes scanning frantically. When she reached the relevant clause, her face contorted with disbelief. This is a trick. It can't be legal. Marcus Peterson confirmed its legality yesterday, I replied. He's already filed the initial paperwork. Jessica turned to Eric, panic in her eyes. Call your lawyer. Now. Eric hesitated, glancing between his wife and me. Jessica, if this clause is real? It is real, I interrupted. And it applies to all the transfers, not just the house. Matthew leaned forward. Wait, you're taking back everything, even the stuff you gave Amber and me? Yes, I said firmly. I need to start fresh, make new decisions based on who my children have revealed themselves to be. Amber nodded, squeezing my hand. I understand, Mom. I support whatever you decide. Jessica wasn't finished. She advanced toward me, finger pointed accusingly. You planned this all along, didn't you? Giving us these things just to snatch them. Back? Some kind of sick test? Something inside me broke at her words. Not my resolve, but the last thread of illusion that my eldest daughter had ever truly loved me for anything beyond what I could give her. No, Jessica. I gave you these gifts. Out of love. Genuine, unconditional love. The kind I thought you had for me. I was wrong. Jessica's face crumpled, not with remorse, but with the realization that she had lost. Her voice dropped to a desperate whisper. Mom, please. We renovated the whole house. We've spent thousands already. We told everyone this was our home now. For a moment, I almost wavered. Then I remembered the cold nights in the garage, the isolation, the casual cruelty, and my resolve hardened again. You should have thought of that before you relegated me to the garage, I said quietly. You have 30 days to vacate the property. Jessica's desperate eyes darted around the room, landing finally on the one thing she thought might sway me. She pointed toward the wall where framed photos of my grandchildren hung. What about Zach and Emma? This is their home now, too. You'd throw your own grandchildren out on the street? It was a low blow, using the children as emotional leverage. But I was prepared. They will always be welcome in my home, I said. Any home I choose to live in. You might try explaining to them why treating people with dignity matters. Jessica stormed out, Eric trailing behind her, leaving Matthew, Amber, and me in the suddenly quiet living room. Through the window, I could see Jessica in the driveway, gesturing wildly as she berated her husband. Matthew ran a hand through his hair. Mom, I had no idea. I swear if I'd known. I nodded, believing him. I know, Matthew. He looked down at his hands. What happens now? I closed my folder, suddenly exhausted but lighter than I'd felt in weeks. Now, I said, I reclaim my life. The first week after the confrontation was the hardest. Jessica refused to speak to me directly, communicating only through terse text, messages, and her lawyer. She and Eric began packing immediately, not out of compliance, but anger. I could hear them late into the night, their muffled arguments seeping through the walls of my garage sanctuary. Amber stayed with me, sleeping on an air mattress beside my twin bed, refusing to leave me alone, in case Jessica tries something. Her protective instinct touched me deeply. On the third day, Matthew arrived with a moving truck. I'm not here to take anything, he explained when I met him in the driveway. I'm here to help you move out, if that's what you want. I hesitated. Legally, I had the right to move back into the house immediately. But watching Jessica and Eric angrily boxing up their belongings, hearing their bitter comments about me, strengthened my resolve to make a clean break. Yes, I decided. I'd like to move to the Willow Creek house today. Matthew helped Amber, and me pack my meager garage possessions. As we worked, he kept glancing toward the main house, guilt etched across his features. Mom, I'm so sorry, he finally said. I should have checked on you more. I should have known something was wrong. You have your own life, Matthew, I said, folding the last of my clothes into a suitcase. That's no excuse, he insisted. We're family. I let you down. I paused, considering his words. Yes, you did, I admitted. But you're here now. It wasn't absolution, but it was acknowledgement of his failure and his attempt to make amends. He nodded soberly, accepting both. By evening, I was settled in the Willow Creek house. Amber and Matthew helped arrange my few belongings in the empty rooms, but the space still felt cavernous and bare. We'll go furniture shopping tomorrow, Amber declared. This place needs your touch, Mom. That night, alone in my new bedroom with only a mattress on the floor, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I had done the right thing. Had I been too harsh? Should I have given Jessica another chance? But then I remembered her cold words. The garage is all you need, and knew I had made the necessary choice. The following weeks were a blur of activity: furniture deliveries, utility setups, meeting new neighbors. Amber extended her stay, helping me settle in before reluctantly returning to Chicago. Matthew called regularly, checking in with genuine concern rather than obligation. Jessica remained silent. A month after moving out, I stood in my new kitchen, unpacking groceries, when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Jessica, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. For a moment, I considered not answering. But something in her posture, a defeated slump I'd never seen before, made me open the door. She didn't speak immediately, her eyes taking in my appearance, the home. Behind me, "You look well," she finally said. "I am well," I replied neutrally. Jessica shifted uncomfortably. "May I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. She entered cautiously, as if entering a stranger's home. "We finished moving out yesterday," she said, following me to the kitchen. "The house is empty." I nodded, continuing to unpack my groceries. "Let her get to the point in her own time. Eric's parents are letting us stay with them until we find a new place," she continued. "It's challenging. His mother isn't exactly welcoming." The irony wasn't lost on me, but I didn't comment. "Mom," Jessica finally said, her voice cracking, "I need the house back. We can't afford anything comparable in this market. The kids are miserable sharing a room at their grandparents'. Please." I set down the can I was holding and turned to face her fully. "Jessica, do you understand why I revoked the gift?" She looked away. "Because you were upset about the garage situation." "No," I said firmly, "because you showed me who you truly are. You revealed that you value property over people, over your own mother." "That's not fair," she protested weakly. "Isn't it? You relegated me to the garage of my own home without a second thought. You changed the lock so I couldn't enter freely. You treated me like an inconvenient tenant rather than your mother." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "I made a mistake. I see that now." "Do you? Or are you just saying what you think I want to? Here because you need something from me?" Her silence was answer enough. "The house is no longer available, Jessica. I've decided to sell it." Her head snapped up. "Sell it? But it's been in our family for 40 years. Dad would never want—" "Your father," I interrupted, "left very clear instructions about ensuring my well-being. I'm following his wishes by prioritizing my peace of mind." "So that's it? You're punishing me forever?" I shook my head. "This isn't punishment, Jessica. It's consequence. There's a difference." She stood abruptly. "I should go." At the door, she paused, turning back with one last attempt. "What about the kids? Don't you want to see your grandchildren?" "I love Zach and Emma," I said gently. "They're welcome here any time. But I will not be manipulated through them." After she left, I sat on my new sofa, processing the encounter. I felt neither vindication nor guilt, only a calm certainty that I had done what was necessary for my own well-being. The Colonial sold quickly, as I knew it would. The proceeds, combined with the funds Daniel had set aside, ensured my financial security for the rest of my life. Marcus helped me establish a new estate plan, dividing my assets equally among my 3 children, but with clear stipulations about how I was to be treated in my old age. "They'll all receive the same amount," I told Marcus, "but only if they demonstrate consistent respect and care." "Daniel would approve," he said with a smile. Months passed. My new house gradually became a home filled with carefully chosen furniture, art I loved, and plants that thrived under my care. I joined a book club, made friends with neighbors, volunteered at the local library. At 65, I was building a life entirely of my own choosing. Matthew visited regularly, sometimes bringing his new girlfriend, a kind woman who treated me with genuine warmth. Amber called daily and came for extended visits whenever her schedule allowed. Even Jessica's children began to visit, dropped off by Eric, who would nod politely before leaving to run errands while they spent time with me. As for Jessica herself, our relationship remained strained but civil. The harsh lesson had been necessary, though not immediately transformative. Real change, I knew, would take time, if it came at all. One afternoon, about a year after everything had happened, I sat in my garden, enjoying the spring flowers. My phone chimed with a text message from Jessica. "Mom, I've been seeing a therapist. I'm working on understanding why I treated you the way I did. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'd like a chance to talk. When you're ready." I set the phone down, watching a butterfly land on a nearby rosebush. Was I ready? Part of me wanted to protect myself, to keep the walls up that had served me so well. But another part remembered the young girl Jessica had once been, running. To me with scraped knees and broken toys, trusting me to make things right. I had learned that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's self-sacrifice. I had also learned that boundaries without compassion can harden into walls that keep everyone out. I picked up the phone and typed, "Saturday, 2 p.m. I'll make tea." Setting the phone aside, I turned my face to the sun, feeling its warmth on my skin. At 66, I had finally learned what Daniel had always known about me. I was stronger than I thought. Strong enough to stand up for myself when necessary, and perhaps strong enough to open my heart again, cautiously, with clear boundaries, when the time was right. The garage had not been all I needed. What I needed was respect, dignity, and the courage to demand both. Thanks to Daniel's foresight and my own hard-won wisdom, I now had a home that was truly mine, not just the physical structure, but the life I had built within it. As the afternoon light turned golden, I smiled, knowing Daniel would be proud, not just of how I had stood up to Jessica, but of how I had found my way back to myself in the process. "The garage is all you need, Mom," Jessica had once said. She had been wrong. What I needed, what everyone needs, was to be valued for who I am, not what I can provide. It had taken a painful journey to learn that lesson, but now that I had, nothing and no one would make me forget it again.